What a good, productive day in the mines. Now it's just time to go to bed, have another day tomorrow. Just before I go to sleep, I just want to make sure there's nothing under my bed. No, it all looks good. Alright. Hi there. So, for an upcoming project, I really needed a way to have all the functionality of an observer without actually being able to see it. And to do that, I came up with this device. I wondered if anybody had made this before, but I couldn't find anything on YouTube. So, if it's out there, let me know. Yeah, so as I explained, this is essentially an observer without actually being able to see it. If you make any updates to this block, you can get a signal out. The reason I made this was for a build, which I'll show you in a minute, where I wanted to detect a double door opening without any observers. The first thought I had was a skulk sensor, but skulk sensor cooldowns are just way too long, and as it's a double door, I found this weird directionality, in my world at the very least, where even at the maximum distance, only one of the skulk sensors would ever fire, and it just wasn't working. The next step was I thought I could use update detectors. So you detect block updates with something like this. If I were to put a block down, that updates this block. But unfortunately, doors don't update blocks when you open and close them anyway, just when you destroy them. So I needed something else. The idea that came to me was to use the floating carpet trick. The floating carpet trick is basically where you have a sticky piston attached to some slime that can't be moved, here thanks to this obsidian, and when you retract this piston, it doesn't update the blocks around it. If I put a carpet on top and retract, the carpet stays in place. So importantly for my system, you can also use this to stop water sources from flowing. So, see, the water source is just stuck. But you can actually update water sources with block events that don't usually update blocks, including doors opening. And in fact, this works with, as far as my testing has shown, this seems to work for everything observers can detect. So, you can create a system which can detect everything an observer can detect, one layer removed from an actual observer. The rest of this system, as you can see here, there's an observer to detect the water flowing, and a repeater to essentially turn the double signal of the observer into a single signal for the piston. Because if this was set to 1, or if there wasn't a repeater at all, then it would turn into a clock. So the great thing about using water sources is you can use, as far as I can tell, any waterloggable block to do this. So any blocks which have variants like slabs and stairs, or any blocks which go well with other non-waterloggable blocks like trapdoors. And using that, you can create a completely seamless floor. Like here I have what looks like just oak planks, but this is actually a slab, and this is a staircase. So to build this, I mean, you can just pause and build like this. This can be surrounded by any blocks, really. They don't have to be anything special. The only things I'd point out is this has to be some immovable block. This has to be any non-transparent block, as in transparent to redstone. And these can be anything. So for the build I'm making, I need 2 doors next to each other, which was pretty simple. Just extended the slime. The only real difference is it's important for this case to have extra blocks underneath so that the water doesn't flow from one side to the other. Also, I guess quickly, you might be wondering how the wall version of this works. It's basically the same but on its side. In fact, it's very slightly more compact because you can just do this sort of redstone setup. So already in my world, I found lots of uses for this. You can do anything an observer can do, but importantly, things which can't be detected by update detectors, and in some cases, things that can't be detected by sculk sensors. So, for instance, sleeping in a bed and waking up from a bed can't be detected via sculk sensors. It can detect things like fences, attaching and unattaching from blocks nearby. It can detect things like crops growing, trapdoors and doors. Probably the most useful for traps is the way it interacts with string. You can detect placing string, but you can also detect players walking through it. And also you can detect using a brewing stand, so changes in state to the brewing stand. So this device is probably mostly useful in quite specific situations, but for things like traps, like you saw in my intro, and the reason I made this in the first place, is to make builds where it has redstone functionality without being able to see any of the redstone. So I'll show you that now in my survival world. So in my survival world, I'm building a load of shops for a high street. I'm going to fill them with villagers for different trades, but I have a bakery, a pharmacy, a tailor's, and also a barbershop. And as any good barbershop, or really as all barbershops should have, they have mirrors. The problem, of course, is in Minecraft there are no mirrors. So the only way to do it is to replicate everything on one side, mirrored on the other. Of course, a big problem here that you might be able to notice is that this has windows. The first thing I had to do is recreate basically most of the street outside in the mirrors, so I have a nice reflection. And importantly for this project, I have doors. Now, obviously, for a mirror to look convincing, when I open these doors, I want these doors to open too. But because I'm trying to make this build look nice, I don't want observers in the floor ruining my very nice barbershop tiling. So, instead, I made this. This is also attached for these doors here, so you can see they're open, closed. I turn the 2 pulses from an observer into an on and off torch here. So 2 pulses turns the torch on, 2 more pulses turns this torch off. And that's as fast as I need it. So yeah, I hope you like my barbershop. Outside of this video, I'm quite happy with these lamps and with using these as shampoo bottles. But yeah, back to the creative world. So one last thing I'll show is you can make the reset faster. With this version, the reset will always take more than 2 repeater ticks thanks to this, which means you can't open and close the door in less time than it takes for this to reset. But you can make quicker versions. The fastest reset I've made so far is using this setup. So, just for a comparison. So it's faster, but for the application I'm using in my world, I wanted it to be fast enough, which this 2 repeater is. I'm not going to be spamming the door, but more importantly for my world, I wanted to be quieter, and so having less pistons is just better for me. And also, I'm not taking the signal from after the repeater, I'm taking the signal directly from the observer. I think that's everything. I hope this is useful for builds where you want to integrate redstone in without it being noticed, or traps. So yeah, thanks for watching.